COVID-19 vaccine, the genetic material or messenger RNA for this new vaccine, including the newly formulated genetic material meant to provide protection against Omicron variant, is being manufactured by a company called National Resilience, known simply as Resilience. And the article is long and very thorough, and it unravels the deception behind all of this. I mean, you have, I can't write it all out for you, you have to read it.
This is another really important article that's essentially telling us that all of the big power behind these shots and behind this new medical frontier is related to surveillance and national security. So this company, National Resilience, is a spin-off of the CIA, and they are focused on future pandemic preparedness. And Whitney Webb goes into lots of detail. The current CEO of Resilience, Polly, is your favorite, the former CEO of Novavax. On the board is the former chair of the FDA, Scott Gottlieb. The woman who came up with the idea for this National Resilience company that just got started was the vice president of In-Q-Tel, which is a CIA-linked company. The board of Resilience is a who's who of people from the security state, big pharma, and pharmaceutical philanthropy. This is very closely related to artificial intelligence and essentially getting rid of medicine as we know it, so that you don't ever go to see a human doctor, you see a robot doctor, you have telemedicine visits. And all of this is somehow related to Palantir, which is another CIA-linked company. So Whitney Webb is basically telling us, keep an eye. Moderna and Resilience are not talking about their partnership. Resilience is making the mRNA that's going into these boosters. She's saying we've got to keep an eye on this. And I agree. This is scary, Polly. Why are we getting our so-called medicines from our secret surveillance agency? This doesn't sound good.
No. Well, sounding even worse than that. I mean, lots of people warning about these boosters coming this fall. I mean, it's ridiculous how many people are. I mean, all right, well, Epic Times writing, and it was printed in the Defender here, toxic metallic compounds found in all COVID vaccine samples analyzed by German scientists. All the vaccines, COVID-19 vaccine samples, without exception. The Working Group for COVID Vaccine Analysis says that some of the toxic elements found inside the AstraZeneca, Pfizer and Moderna vaccine vials were not even listed in the ingredients list from the manufacturers. The article then lists the findings, so you'll see it here. The findings build on the work of other researchers, they're not on their own, in the international community who have described similar findings. The number and consistency of the allegations of contamination alone, coupled with the eerie silence from global safety and regulatory bodies, is troublesome and perplexing in terms of transparency and continued allegations by these bodies that the genetic vaccines are safe, said Dr. Jancy Lindsay, PhD, a toxicologist. Using a small sample of live blood analysis from both vaccinated and unvaccinated individuals, we have determined that artificial intelligence, known as AI, can distinguish with 100% reliability between the blood of the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. AstraZeneca, Moderna, Pfizer, and Johnson & Johnson did not respond to a request for comment.
Yeah, it's incredibly scary. The fact that somehow these vaccinations permanently change your blood, that is deeply disturbing. And I would just point out that this group of German scientists is 60 members strong. I've been in touch with some of them, and they point out that a lot of their data and their findings have been cross-validated. They have been in touch with scientists in Australia and New Zealand and the United States. And the fact that there's no comments from any of the manufacturers after this very serious, I believe it's a 70-page report that these scientists put together. Again, that's just deeply disturbing. It's deeply disturbing, Polly. And I've looked at some of the scientists that I've seen, and this report I've seen these images of debris, metallic debris, in the shots themselves, and also you can see it in the blood, and it's deeply disturbing. What is this stuff? Why is it there? How did it get there? What does it mean? Those are all unanswered questions.
Yeah, Mary, but yet, up get the Biden administration and all these doctors that say they're safe and effective, get your boosters. I mean, Michael Caine was talking about it on Good Morning the other day. It's just, again, school teachers being told, get your booster or no job. I mean, nothing's changing, and yet we're uncovering all this evidence of serious harm and death.
It's still bad, Polly, but it is changing because, and we'll talk about a very good piece that Dr. McCullough wrote that we published in the Defender. The narrative is now completely chaotic. It makes no sense. And I do think that when things make no sense, there's a lot more opportunity for people to say, we won't comply. We just won't comply.
Yeah, okay. Back to the Defender with Mahada Sethi, MD again. Too little, too late. Wall Street Journal tries to save face on failed COVID policies. Now that our public health agencies leaders have admitted failure when it comes to their own COVID-19 policies, the Wall Street Journal suddenly has the courage to offer a stiff critique they published in an opinion piece. Quote here, Fauci and Walensky double down on failed COVID response with the subhead, lockdowns were aggressively and deadly, but the US and World Health Organization officials plan worse for the next pandemic. John Tierney, author of the op-ed piece, wrote, lockdowns and mask mandates were the most radical experiment in the history of public health. But Dr. Walensky isn't alone in thinking they failed because they didn't go far enough. Anthony Fauci recently said there should have been much, much more stringent restrictions early in the pandemic. That's what they learned from the destruction. Their public health policies wreaked upon this nation, and the others followed their lead. To his credit, Tierney points out the absurdity of Walensky and Fauci's stance on their incompetence. The problem here is with the Wall Street Journal, says the author, every single point this opinion piece offered could and should have been made months or years ago. Why did it take so long to run this kind of piece when the evidence was around for so long? You failed your readership and you failed the public. Well said, Dr. Sethi.
Yes, and he said that they still have not talked about the failure to use early treatments or to advise about them now. And he said that the silence continues to deafen us. It's another very strong piece by Dr. Sethi. And like you said, good for the Wall Street Journal for now at least stepping out. It's doing what the Washington Post and the New York Times are not doing, but they still could have done this 2 years ago.
So going back to what we were talking about before about this fall campaign with fear that's going to come, I mean, after Labour Day, I mean, there's so many warnings in the mainstream news that, there's a big campaign coming after Labour Day, so, be prepared for that. Some of you viewers sent us in things. Well, this is something sent in by a viewer saying that, and this viewer got this by mail to them. But, and as you can see here on the screen, it says, before you know it, summer will be over. Don't forget your child's annual well visit. You may be eligible for a $25 gift card for your child completing their well visit, and we know what that means. And you may also be eligible for another $25 gift card when they complete the vaccine series for meningococcal, Tdap, and HPV. And it says, do ask about upcoming flu shot clinics as well, because that's the best way to protect your child against flu. It's absolutely disgraceful, Mary. And if you don't read the small print on that, you may think, if you don't have, any much money, you don't know better, that you'll go along and get these gift cards, and they're not even going to give you that. You're going in for a draw for a gift card. It's just tragic.
It is, and I would point out that that's using taxpayer money. That mailer was from the California Department of Public Health. That's not even a private clinic that's making money off the shots. That's the state using taxpayer money to line these pockets and to induce people to take these shots.
Well, we have that one here.
Yeah.
Number one, Lighthouse, back to school bash and vaccination fair to help children and families get off to a healthy start. Maria Bunning, president of Mayo Hospital, says success at school begins with focus on health and wellness. This includes helping kids stay current with vaccinations, including the COVID-19 vaccine. We welcome children and families to come by and catch up on vaccinations, sign up for a door prize, and check out the games and activities. The Back to School Bash will feature LL Bean backpacks stuffed with school supplies, 30 winners, so not guaranteed there. And it goes on to do all kinds of goodies, ice cream, treats, and healthy snacks. And they say there's no cost to attend. So again, another version of Come,
And
come, come.
bicycles too. Yeah, and this is Maine. So these are states that are really pushing this narrative about the shots. And I think it's not a coincidence that that was Maine and California.
But one thing I noticed here, it says, give cards more, and it says, COVID-19 vaccines are for school-age kids, but their siblings 6 months of age and older can also get their shots. And then if you require vaccines, other vaccines for school, that will also be available on the day. Where is the science on COVID-19 vaccines and MMR and DTaP and all those other things? HPV, all being given.
We've talked about this. The CDC just said that with absolutely no science whatsoever. And in general, there's no science really about the co-administration of these shots. It's incredibly dangerous, and there will be harms.
Well, having just watched Michael Caine doing a fantastic job at the US Open, we'll talk about that in a minute. Why can't we send him down to these centres with CHD backpacks to give out? Not because these people don't have any money, Mary, and they're going to get their backpacks for their kids. They don't know any better. Maybe we should have a CHD vaccination, non-vaccination clinic. They're just silly ideas, everybody.
No, we've gone to places where they had COVID shots for kids, Polly. We've done that in the New York area. We've done that.
Okay, maybe we should. I mean, if they want backpacks and stuff, I don't know. There must be a way of doing it. I'm sure our people could do that. Okay, this astounded me. Zero hedge here. Rockefeller Foundation wants behavioral scientists to come up with more convincing COVID vax narratives. In yet another sign that the COVID vaccination agenda did not do quite as well as they'd hoped, the Rockefeller Foundation has revealed that it, along with other non-profits, has been putting millions of dollars into a behavioral science project meant to figure out why large groups of people around the world refuse to take the jab. It's called the Mercury Project. What a weird, spooky name. It's a collective of behavioral scientists. The root intentions appear to be focused on using behavioral psychology and mass psychology elements to understand the global resistance in the recent COVID compliance efforts. Mercury groups will be deployed in multiple nations and regions and will study vaccine refusal and the medical disinformation that leads to it. They're operating with the intent to tailor vaccine narratives to fit different ethnic and political backgrounds, looking for the key to the gates of each cultural kingdom and convincing them to take the jab. And then it goes on, it's really sinister, targeting secondary school students. It's more like telling them how to notice people that spread misinformation. It's really dark stuff. And I think reading this article made me realise we mustn't get complacent, Mary.
Oh, not at all. We need to absolutely be on our guard, and we will cover an article. I do think the fall and the winter are going to be very challenging, honestly. But I think this article by Zero Hedge is interesting, just basically saying that the Rockefeller Foundation is sponsoring propaganda. And the author, Zero Hedge, says, why are they insisting on 100% vaccination when the CDC has just announced that we have herd immunity and there's no basis for discriminating? They're trying to convince people in spite of the science, not because of the science. So again, I hope that lots more people are on alert that none of this makes any sense anymore and they should beware. When nothing makes sense and people are trying desperately to get you to take experimental medical products, people need to be very, very much on guard.
I mean, our community, Mary, there's nothing in the world that's going to change their minds. It doesn't matter how many Mercury groups you put together, but it's the ones that are sitting on the fence that have been standing firm. Now, they're the ones that I'm concerned because I think it's going to be rough, like I say, with the media. If people listen to the mainstream media, it's going to be rough. DC Mayor says no virtual learning, giving unvaccinated Black teens zero alternative options. During a press conference, DC Mayor Muriel Bowser, a Democrat, admitted there are no alternative options, including virtual learning, due to the district's vaccine mandate, meaning unvaccinated children will effectively be left without an education. Over 40% of Blacks aged 12 to 17 are not vaccinated. Students get 20 days to provide their vaccination certificate. Quote, if the student does not come into compliance within a 20-day period, the school must remove the student from school until the immunization certificate is secured by the school. I can't believe that's got a
I want to point out that she has already walked that back. So she had set the deadline of August 26th, but I'm sure based on tremendous pushback and advice from people who are more aware than she is, that deadline has been pushed back to January 3rd, 2023. So she still, she's told us that there is no remote learning option. And if all of the 40% of African American students still are not vaccinated by January 3rd, we'll see what happens. We have threatened to sue. We think that that mandate is illegal because in fact, they don't have the approved vaccine available to give these kids. With this added amount of time, I won't be surprised, Polly, if she on her own backs down from this again and simply waives the mandate. But what she proposed was absolutely outrageous, right? To throw out a huge percentage of students with no alternative and then essentially try to prosecute the parents for truancy. It's just ridiculous. And she did walk that back.
And is that the Michael Nevadakis defender DC schools extend deadline of COVID vaccine? So we'll put that one up for you to catch up on.
Right, and that article by Michael Nevadakis, which is excellent, points out that Mayor Bowser just lost another lawsuit related to COVID vaccines. The Washington, D.C. District of Columbia Police Union challenged the mandate for police members, and they lost that case before the Superior Court. Basically, the district is an outlier. It has tried to push forward some of the most draconian COVID measures. And as I pointed out and gave a comment to Michael Nevadakis, one of the things that distinguishes Washington, D.C. is that they don't have two chambers of the legislature. They don't have a Senate and Assembly. They just have one chamber, the City Council. And they all happen to be in one political party right now, and it happens to be the party in power in Congress. So we've just seen really bad policy related to COVID coming out of DC. But it was interesting, one of the other groups, Polly, that came out against her proposed mandate for school children was the NAACP, the National Association for Colored People. And they stood up, as well as Republicans in Congress wrote letters to the mayor. But when the NAACP chapter for the District of Columbia stood up to her, they would typically be constituents of this African American mayor. I think that and many things led her to change her immediate policy.
Well, Defender will keep us up to date.
Yes.
Okay, Epic Times writing to Defender reprint here. Brown University student was injured by mandatory COVID vaccine, and now doctors want answers. Brown University, which mandates vaccines for all students, hasn't informed its student body about the apparent hospitalization of a young male, which took place in March 2021, or other vaccine-related hospitalizations. Members of their own student body have contracted serious illnesses that are vaccine-induced, that the university is not only not telling their students about, but they also use coercion, which makes them take a vaccine that might be harmful to them, State Patricia Morgan, a Republican, told the Epic Times, and is not giving them a choice, not a realistic choice. Here, either you take the vaccine or you're going to derail your future. How's that for choice? It's just unethical. She and doctors are calling for Brown to withdraw its vaccine mandate.
Yes, and I think this case is particularly interesting, Polly, because Dr. Ashish Jha had been at Brown in their public health and medical schools, and he's now the White House advisor on COVID. So this particular situation where the university failed to inform the student body and did suffer a student injury has particular significance, particular visibility. I hope that Representative Morgan continues to push to get this into the media. I think it's a really important story.
Okay, well, Dr. Joseph McCullough here in the Defender. The CDC backtracks on COVID guidance. Is it a political ploy, he asks. Without fanfare, the CDC reversed all its COVID-19 guidelines. Was the move politically motivated? And what happens after the midterms? It also vindicates every misinformation spreader, he says. The CDC is now advocating for taking personal responsibility and for everyone to decide for themselves which prevention behaviours to use and when based on their own risk tolerance. The CDC is also giving up on discrimination based on COVID-19 jab status, stating its COVID-19 prevention recommendations no longer differentiate based on a person's vaccination status because breakthrough infections occur. They also admit natural immunity exists and works. CDC's about face appears to be politically motivated to give the Biden administration a win before the midterm elections. Post-election plans include the biggest vaccination campaign in history. So tyrannical overreaches may later resume, even as mounting data shows the COVID-19 shots are causing depopulation, says Dr. Joseph McCullough. That's a kind of strong article, but I kind of feel like personally I feel like he's right.
Oh, I think this is a fantastic article that suggests very strongly that what the CDC's reversal is about is a political ploy. And he justifies that by saying it's so late in the game. They could have made a statement like this anytime over the last 2 years. The timing is right before the midterm elections in early November. And as they quote Professor Mark Crispin Miller, a friend to CHD, who says, the tool of tyranny is not constant pressure. The Pavlovian technique is pressure release. And so we're in this period of release right now, but they've already told people in the UK that in the fall there will be the biggest vaccine drive in history. So Dr. McCullough is urging us to get resolved. It's not clear what pandemic they're going to use come the fall, whether it's October or November, whether it's going to be monkeypox or polio or COVID or something new, but there will be the next pandemic. And I think Dr. McCullough is right. We really do need to be getting ourselves mentally prepared now that this is a ploy. It will last, I would think, largely in the United States through the early November elections. But after that, I think things will change pretty dramatically.
Okay. Suzanne Burdick, PhD in The Defender, promising a full quoted investigation of Fauci. Senators demand NIH, HHS preserve all related documents and communication. This is 2 US senators the day after Dr. Fauci announced plans to leave his government post in December, formally requested preserving these documents and communications related to Fauci. Mary, do you want to talk about that? I mean, are they right? Please.
Oh, they're absolutely right. We also have contacted the NIH to say you must preserve all documents. Certainly, Dr. Fauci is going to be subpoenaed. Certainly, there will be serious investigations if the political control in the House of Representatives shifts, potentially even in the Senate. And absolutely, Dr. Fauci is at the center of that. And he did make statements to Congress that NIH did not fund gain of function, and yet clearly the data show that the evidence shows that indirectly NIH absolutely funded gain of function or lethality bioweapons research through funding to EcoHealth Alliance, through funding to Dr. Ralph Barrick at the University of North Carolina. So absolutely, it is critical that we preserve those emails, and I believe, Polly, there will be very serious investigations come January. And I think that was a major reason in Dr. Fauci stepping down now, so that he will not have to go be in front of Congress come January. And there are other reasons. I think there's another article that we'll talk about that goes over his reasons for stepping down.
Well, I had Dr. Marek and Dr. Corey on last Friday, and they were talking about the importance of reading Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s book, Real Anthony Fauci, right now, because you have to know, and that book tells you everything. They both do it was a very good interview. They're really very smart, those two.
About Dr. Fauci, it's an important question. Why is he stepping down now? Why now? He's been there for over 40 years. He had just announced 2 months ago that he was going to stay to the end of Biden's term. There are many potential reasons we don't know for sure, but one is that he actually may have already become a liability to the Biden administration. Many of us saw on social media that he threw out the first baseball in Seattle, and he was roundly booed by the whole stadium. Seattle is Bill Gates's home state. It's a very blue state. If he's being booed in Seattle, he may be a liability to the administration that's facing re-election. Another reason that is thought is potentially motivating him is book royalties. So he's now presumably in negotiations for a book contract. He would not be able to get royalties if he were still in the government, but if he can negotiate something now, he can get paid out in January. The other thought why he announced now that he's leaving by the end of the year so that he can collect his vacation pay, he can hang out at home and do what he wants, but he can also engineer his successor at NIAID. He can help to perhaps get that approval process through the Congress before he's out and the House of Representatives is likely to be under the other party's control. So all of those are reasons that people are giving for why he announced that he was leaving in December, in August.
Right. Well, again, Defender will keep us updated, no doubt. Right. USA Today. This is weird. You have a lump on your arm weeks after the monkeypox vaccine. Why? It's a super common side effect. Ever since the viral outbreak, many people have taken to social media to report side effects of the Jynneos vaccine. A temporary lump is normal for any vaccine. It's a super common side effect. If it's causing pain, the recommendations are Tylenol or Motrin, which personally I really advise not taking. That's me, my little personal thing. Other side effects include muscle pain, headache, fatigue, nausea. This vaccine produces side effects that are comparable, it says, to most other vaccines. Well, that's not good.
So I think what's interesting about this, Polly, is that they're normalizing side effects, right? They go from saying, oh, they're perfectly safe, there's no side effects, safe and effective, to saying, oh, it's normal to have a lump on your arm, just get the other shot, get the second dose in your other arm. Oh, 1 to 10 people have side effects, fatigue, nausea, chills, fever, no big deal. Again, Polly, it becomes so implausible. Which is it? Is it safe? Or does it cause unavoidable side effects that you're supposed to just ignore? They can't really have it both ways all the time.
It actually says here in this article, and I'm quoting exactly what it says, don't let side effects prohibit you from going back for a second dose.
Right. And at the same time, they're telling you that it's perfectly safe. Polly, people are smarter than this. They're smarter than this.
Well, you would think, Mary, but I just, as I said before, watched Michael Caine's fantastic footage from the US Open. Go back to Tuesday's Good Morning CHD. And it's quite unbelievable. He was just standing up supporting Novak with a whole crowd of amazing people. And then started asking questions to most of the public. I mean, it's shocking footage, Mary. Most of the people just don't want to be associated. And then some people say, you've got to follow the rules, follow the rules. I mean, it's.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. I talked to my I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, it's really, really. I mean, I wish we need to do more things like that. Get out there, and
I agree.
It's shocking how people are just and one person's actually yelling at Michael and everybody. And Michael, they behave very well. Well done, everybody who was doing that. But anyway, the headline here in Defender: I'm not vaccinated, Novak, Djokovic. Officially out of the US Open, tennis star Novak Djokovic's refusal to receive the COVID-19 vaccine continues to stand in the way of his pursuit of the all-time Grand Slam record. Well, I'm really proud of him. I think that he'll go down in history as someone who stood his ground and still then wins Wimbledon like that.
I agree with you, and he certainly clears the path as an example for other athletes in particular, and that's so important. Polly, it's the athletes that we've seen die on the field. He understands what the possible repercussions of taking these shots are.
Yeah, good for him. Okay, well, we have to have our weekly classic article, Mary. And I did miss one last week. A couple of you sent it to me about the exhaust fumes, and I didn't put it in. I've got another one this one. But I did read the exhaust fumes giving you heart attack. I mean, they may well do. Exhaust fumes actually can kill you, so that's a stupid article. This one's in the Express, and a lot of people read the Express in the UK. Headline here: popular non-alcoholic drink associated with blood clot formation within 1 hour of intake. Energy drink consumption in the United States is more than double, so they're building the scene. A study published in the Journal of Surgical Research noted that the intake of the popular beverage, which, by the way, it doesn't tell us which beverage it is, they're going to get sued like crazy, has been implicated in a host of cardiovascular complications such as cardiac arrhythmias, myocardial infarction, and sudden cardiac death. Well, would you believe that? Now, I'm not saying these these energy drinks are good. I'm sure they're disgusting and very bad for you. But I don't think they can really be blamed for all of the sudden anti-stocking debt, which
they definitely can't. It's another diversion, Polly. It's completely a diversion from asking the question, why are all these healthy young people suddenly dying?
And I did notice if you go to the comments, there's a lot of people, which I was pleased to see because it means a lot of people are on our side, saying, well, we don't know which drink it is. And they came up with their own names, like Corona Physical, maybe, and silly stuff like that. It was quite funny. We have some funny people in this world. Anyway, back to serious stuff here. Michael Navradarkas in the Defender. World Economic Forum headline here: solid, rational reasons to implant microchips in kids. Claiming augmented reality technology has the ability to transform society and individual lives. The World Economic Forum recently suggested there are solid, rational, and ethical reasons to consider implanting children with microchips. And then this article goes on, and quite frankly, it says it can help children with dyslexia or could sniff out food allergens or illnesses such as COVID-19. I mean, it's a chip. How can I don't. And it goes on about the potential benefits of these amazing technologies are endless, and it's really quite disturbing, to be honest.
Well, we can't forget, Polly, that the World Economic Forum is an advocate of transhumanism. They are all behind the merging of physical and virtual reality so that we enter the metaverse. And in that context, they are all about this augmented society where people with brain chip interfaces and exoskeletons, and all of this will be integrated into this world of the internet. It's incredibly unappealing to me. The author, or the commentator here, does say there are some ethical concerns. I mean, there are enormous ethical concerns. Obviously, these technologies, in theory, can be used for good, Polly, but what we've seen with so many technologies is inevitably they're used for ill, and they're used for social control by governments and corporations.
Yeah, and one of the things they're saying is, look, if you chip the child, if the child's stolen or whatever, you can trace your child like you can trace a dog and stuff. But still, from the scientific or the medical, we hear our doctors saying we shouldn't be putting these foreign objects into our body. It messes up everything. So you've got to really think everything out. And they're going to scare people. Your child's going to be taken, put the chip in. Right, well, sticking with weird things, let's go to back to the Defender with Dr. Joseph McCullough here. Next up, he says remote-controlled brain communication. US scientists have achieved the previously unthinkable task of remotely controlling the brains of living beings. The beings in this case are genetically engineered fruit flies, and the neurons responsible for causing the flies to spread their wings. But this is only the beginning. The Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, known as DARPA, is funding a project to develop a headset that can read your brain's neural activity and write or encode it to someone else's brain, leading to brain-to-brain communication. The team used magnetic nanoparticles to activate neurons in fruit flies, causing them to alter their wing position. The headset being developed by the MONA study will use light to decode neural activity in one brain, and then similar to the fruit fly study, use magnetic fields to write that activity in another brain in less than 1/20th of a second. The next phase of the study entails demonstrating the technology in rodents and, if successful, moving on to humans within 2 years, although human tests could begin as soon as 2022. God help us all, Mary. I
find this incredibly disturbing, Polly. Of course, they're telling us that this will use for therapeutic purposes. This will be used to help people with Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, but that's completely undermined by the fact that it's DARPA, a military institution in the United States, that's coming up with these brain chips and that's working on these. And this article quotes Professor Yuval Harari, who's a very close advisor to the head of the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, saying science is replacing evolution. We will now have evolution by intelligent design. For 4 billion years, it was just random, but now we can put that 4 billion years on the scrap heap and we can design the human future And he says COVID will be seen as when we change to having surveillance be under the skin. I mean, these people really, Polly, are eugenicists in their thinking. They absolutely are very much the heirs of the Nazi thinking about humans and medicine and what is necessary. Harari is, I think, a very, very dangerous ideologue at the World Economic Forum.
Okay, well, look, changing the subject, but still warning you because that is our job here. Monsanto here, Documents Citizen Defender, show wide-ranging corruption plaintiffs in Roundup weed killer lawsuits say it's part of the sweeping nationwide legal battle that so far has run 7 years. About 140,000 plaintiffs allege they developed non-Hodgkin lymphoma from exposure to Monsanto, now owned by Bayer, Roundup weed killer, and should have been warned of the risk. And it goes on, Mary, you can probably talk about that. But I just want to say, it's still selling Roundup, and I see it in your houses.
It's bad stuff. And as the article says, it either should be off the market or there should be a very clear warning label on it that says use of this product may cause cancer if you get it on your skin. The article quotes Brent Wisner, who's an attorney that Children's Health Defense has worked with his firm, and he's saying that recent developments are favoring people. They're favoring plaintiffs. The Ninth Circuit invalidated an Environmental Protection Agency rule that said that glyphosate was perfectly healthy for children. The court said, no, that's not, you did not reach that through a proper process. And twice in this year, the Supreme Court of the United States has refused to take petitions from Bayer, the owner of Monsanto, regarding the glyphosate case. So things are definitely looking up for plaintiffs, but I was really disappointed, Polly, to go to one of these big stores, garden stores recently, and I saw a huge display of Roundup, and no one, there was no warning sign, and people seem to be buying it.
No, and people listening, weeds are back in fashion.
Well, weeds are just plants that have been given a bad rap, basically. It was interesting. I took a week off a few weeks ago and I went on a nature walk with somebody who's very knowledgeable, and she pointed out all these different plants and what their uses are and how they can be used for food and medicine, and it was extraordinary. The things that we think of as weeds are sometimes incredibly potent medicines.
Yeah, that's very true. I'm sure a lot of people are agreeing right now. Okay, now sticking with, back to Macola and the Defender again, toxic household cleaners. And it's important, this, because again, you may not know. Household cleaners are hazardous to your health, and here are 8 alternatives. Long-term exposure to household cleaners and disinfectants have been linked to increases in asthmatic symptoms, nervous system damage, low sperm count, irregularities in menstruation, and miscarriage. So you need to know about this. So once weekly use of cleaning products for 20 years may be the equivalent to smoking 20 cigarettes a day for 10 to 20 years. Cleaning agents and personal care products are also the second and third most frequent cause of to the poison control in the US. Most dangerous cleaning products are drain cleaners, toilet bowl cleaners, and oven cleaners. Common household products also contribute to air pollution, not just inside the home, but also outdoors. And then the article goes on to talk about the lethal combinations of bleach and ammonia. And so if you're piling it all in, and I remember smelling bleach and stuff, and you can feel it burning your lungs, Mary. You can. And then it goes on to tell you baking soda, white vinegar, lemons, soap, coconut oil, essential oils, things like that. So read it because it'll. But years ago, when we were doing a program for Sky in England, and every week we had to do content, we started to do exactly this, non-toxic household cleaners. And the first time we did vaccines and everything else, and the first time we got a call that a governmental body had gone into Sky to say, take that program down, was about toxic household cleaners, not about vaccines, not about anything else. And Sky told us, it's big business. It's a huge business, and you upset someone that they came in and took that one show down. We were cleaning a bath with a grapefruit and some salt to make it come, and it had to be taken down, Mary. And that's when I saw that. I thought, I remember doing that show. Anyway, it obviously touches a nerve, so you may want to do your own
Yeah, this is a great article. I saved this because it has recipes for different cleaning products using things that are non-toxic. And we don't, it's a big business now to have green products, but really we can make these things. We have things on hand that we can use that are effective.
Yes, we can. Okay, well, Mary, now this did sound like it was a lot of sort of heavy news today, but we do have, I can tell you this, there are so many people working with success at Children's Health Defence behind the scenes. But yes, they are.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're getting the word out. I just got back from Nuremberg with Vera Sharav. We'll show a clip at the end related to that time. As you point out, we had fantastic demonstrators at the US Open talking about Novak Djokovic and his inability to come. We have several lawsuits that we're waiting for decisions on. We just filed an appeal to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals on behalf of New Yorkers for Religious Liberty. I'm very excited about that lawsuit. The religious exemption process in New York City was simply completely inadequate. And the Second Circuit or the US Supreme Court, I truly believe, will find that it was an inadequate process. We have a case that's before the Texas District Court related to the authorization of the Pfizer shot for children. We argue that that was simply inappropriate and that it does pose a threat to parents who don't want their children to get those shots. In Texas, children can be taken by a neighbor or be taken by an aunt or uncle, and there's nothing that would stop that adult from getting that child vaccinated. So many things are going on. As you know, Bobby Kennedy just came out with a new book, Letter to Liberals. I love this really short book that essentially goes through all of the COVID narrative and explains that it was false and that it's hard to believe, but it's real. He's working on a new book right now, The Wuhan Cover-Up. That'll be coming out in the fall. We also have the film, The Real Anthony Fauci, will be coming out this fall. So lots of things going on, Paul.
We have saved the date for the Children's Health Defence conference, so that's been...
We have a conference. We've now come out with the save the date. So the Health Defense Conference is going to be after the Weston A. Price Foundation Conference, which is in and of itself a fantastic conference. I will be speaking there. Bobby Kennedy will be speaking there. But we'll have our own Children's Health Defense Conference starting on Sunday night, October 23rd, and all day Monday, October 24th in Knoxville, Tennessee. Stay tuned. We will be making that information available for sign up, I believe, very soon. So yeah, lots of things happening.
But just to say on that, do keep your eyes peeled for registration. It's not out yet, but there are a very, very limited amount of spaces, just so you know. It's small, starting small. Okay, I just want to make a couple of announcements here. So Shabnam is back hosting tomorrow on Thursday. You did a fantastic job hosting Good Morning CHD last week. Loved it. Although they did say it was only 20 minutes, they wanted longer from you. So
oh, wow. Okay, good to know. I'm always in favor of short but sweet.
Yeah, I am too, but they were like, oh no, it's ended. Okay, Friday, Jessica Rose is hosting her first Good Morning CHD, so we're excited to have that. Alex Webber's back on Saturday, and on Sunday, we are doing a special Good Morning CHD with Michael Caine. He's got something exciting he's put together for you all. So that is going to go out on Sunday. This Friday, we have Toby Rogers on the roundtable, so get ready for that. But now, Mary, if you just want to talk about, we're going to play a clip. I've got here visiting, this is Vera, visiting Sophie Scholl's grave. Vera Sharav, apparently it's very emotional. It was a very emotional experience, and I'm sure it was. Do you want to talk about some 5 activists, student activists?
Polly, while we were in Munich, Vera Sharav and Riley Vujovic, who filmed it, went to the grave of a young activist in the White Rose movement in the 1930s in Germany. And she, as a young woman, was fighting against the Nazis, and she was handing out information to wake people up and make them think. And she was executed. And I unfortunately wasn't able to go on that visit, but I know it was very emotional. And Vera, in part, went to Germany to tell people the parallels that she sees with the 1930s, having lived through them and having lived through life in a labor camp. And I think that the trip to Germany, while very moving, only reinforced for Vera the parallels that do exist between what was happening in the 1930s before the extermination efforts and the final solution of Nazi Germany and what is happening now. She pointed out in her speech, but over and over, it didn't start in the gas chambers, Polly. It started with segregation, it started with discrimination, it started with fear mongering. It started with many of the things that we do see right now.
Yeah, okay, well, we're going to play that clip, but for Mary and I, we'll see you next week. To our viewers, we see you regularly every week commenting, and thank you for your love and support. And right back at you from us. And thank you for just supporting Children's Self Defense and CHD.tv. We really appreciate everything you do. So pray big, stand firm, and we will see you next week. Thank you, Mary. And we're going
Thanks, Polly. Thanks, everybody. Next week.
Okay, so this is the one. I'd like to clean that up, the leaf, so you can see her name. This was a group of students who were a voice against the Nazis, a voice for sanity, for goodness, really. I mean, they were very innocent. All they did was distribute leaflets to people to not obey. And the unfortunate thing was that after one such uh, hurry, they went, and maybe he was like the super caregiver of the housing complex, saw her throw the rest out. They did their thing, and then they were going to just pretend nobody knows who or what. And he saw that and picked it up and delivered her to the Nazis. And she and her brother, and then the others in the group, they were called the White Gloves. They were decapitated. Look how young. 21 to 43. It's all of 22. And she and her brother. Position. Both. That's him. Oh, that's him. Okay, I'm sick. They're very dirty. Well, this one is older. This is this would be her mother or grandmother. This would be probably. So it's the whole family. Jews put stones on gravestones. It's clearly it predates. In other words, it's. I don't know in other religions, non-Judeo-Christian, but the Judeo-Christians seem to continue a tradition that prehistory.
It must come from
Pre-Jewish, because this is they used to leave stones as markers on the road, for example, to know which way somebody else. This is before street signs. You had stones.
What is the significance of the white roses in that movement?
I think that really, a white rose, it's innocence.
Peaceful?
It's peaceful, sure. But it's a real, you could have been a lily, but white rose was probably more prevalent, and maybe it had other symbols in German literature. I don't really know. But it speaks of innocence. And they were so young. I mean, 22. 22.
What lessons can young people draw from the family
That's very
show?
difficult because here they wound up being executed. So it's not exactly, a good example to give of, of doing that. But sometimes, sometimes you become a symbol for posterity, shaming others that, that should not have happened. The German people should have arisen and not just left it for a few students to be the sacrificial lambs, which they were. But they made the decision. people will not be executed now for handing out leaflets. So it behooves people to do it. If that's, and of course, speak out. And if it isn't just a band of, maybe 50 at the most, they were a very small group. If we have, thousands and thousands of them, and we have the ability to do that if people will just understand that by sitting back, this could then result. They were really very, very genteel, beautiful souls. They were essentially the best the German culture had to offer, and that's what they got. It symbolizes really both the innocence, the intelligence, and the brutality of how they were just. And decapitation was that was what Hitler wanted. He wanted you to watch this. Yeah, no, I mean, evil is something that you really need to understand. It's real. It's real. I mean, really, what did they? How did that even threaten the regime? And yet, that's it. No. So,
Society was completely indifferent to understanding what it was that was similar between Sophie and this young girl, and that is to stand up against what also my Androskia said, the indifference to people's rights being taken away from them. And that's exactly what is the comparison similarity.
Yeah. No, I mean, we're the best that Germany actually cultivated until.
There are also very stark parallels to what happened in South Africa in the apartheid struggle. The young people who were conscientized were out on the streets, they were rallying, they were campaigning. And in 1976, in Soweto,
That was the height of it.
young people were mowed down for rising up peacefully for their right to education. And it's the same now in South Africa, with the Peace Must Fall movement, where all they want is education. And so the role of young people in creating a better world is everything. It's part of the message we conveyed 3 days ago of Nuremberg 75. So it's up to the youth to rise up and help us create the world that we want.
One wonders, has anything been learned at all?
Yes. We've learned.
Well, but we need many more. It's the numbers that matter, really, the numbers. We don't need ammunition. We have ammunition, but we have right truth in us.
Exactly.
And that's, ultimately that comes through, but how many casualties do we need before people?
Right.
How many times does slaughter have to be? And now it's being done just through injectables. Nobody, most people just simply don't want to believe that's ammunition. Those are weapons. The brutality that was used then in South Africa, that was good. People could see that. They couldn't wash that away. But now it's, this subtle way for our health. Well, as it says, I mean, the memory is kept alive in different schools, but you're not allowed to actually make the connection. That's what's the obscenity. I would say today the obscenity is that they pay homage, but they don't want you to know that this is happening now.
Just look over there. Okay, I'm in the clear. That was tense. Oh, hey, Mom.
Hi, honey. Did you make it to the beach shelter out there?
Yeah. Almost there.